Hey everyone, Corey from Aquarium Co-op. Today we're talking about goldfish. I waited as long as I could to start this live stream because my eye is bugging out. So if my eye is twitching or something like that, don't worry about it. But we're gonna focus on goldfish, and then probably towards the end at some point. And I don't know how long this is going. I'll kind of open it up to all questions, just because I know there's people with disease questions and things like that that need to be answered in a timely manner. So we'll see what we can do. But first, I'm going to hit the first question I saw, and that was from Flynn. What's my favorite goldfish? That's a hard one to answer. If I have to pick one, it's probably ranchus. Even though I don't have as many of them back there behind me as I would like, I think there's something to be said for really big ranchus. And not that I've ever had I've never had one like as big as that Ryukin or anything like that, but I want to. And whenever I see big pictures of ranchus, I'm super envious and jealous of it. So I think that's the most, but I do love most. So let's see. So does anyone have any goldfish questions? Because so far you guys are just chatting between yourselves. So don't forget we had a live chat earlier today, or a live stream. So you can watch that. If you're watching this right now, it's about 8 p.m. Eastern. The other one starts at 3 p.m. Eastern, so it gets multiple time zones and things like that. I haven't chose any topics for next week yet, so maybe in the comments of this one, after this video uploads, let us know what you want. We'll try and talk about it. I'm trying to give a theme each time. I'm seeing how that goes. I don't know if that's the format or anything. We did test and figure out that whether I stream for just an hour or 4 hours is pretty much all the same. So I'll cut it off when either my voice is giving out, I'm tired, the viewership's gone down, something like that. But there's no set schedule for tonight. If you guys haven't already, go ahead and share this out there. Get more people in here. I have no idea how many are in here yet, but hopefully some questions are starting to filter in. So Stephanie asks, do you do the same proactive quarantine medications for goldfish as I use for the rest of my fish? I do. Yeah, I use the General Cure, erythromycin, and Icex. They can also, goldfish can handle a lot of salt as well. So if I had a lot of wounds, or let's say a lot of ammonia burn in the shipment or something like that, I would add quite a bit of salt as well. But I still would use all the meds in addition to it. So Charlie asks the best way to message me. The best way to message me during a live stream and stuff like that's going to be email. I think Charlie's asking because I made him a mod and he wanted to serve me some questions or something like that. But I have certain mods do that. So yeah. So we're just going to keep moving along here. At one point, have the distorted conformation strains gone too far with goldfish? I mean, that's a question that it's like a taste and preference thing almost. I would say, in my opinion, some of them have gone too far. Even though I keep them and stuff like that, of course I'm drawing a blank. Pearl scale goldfish, basically they look like a golf ball. In my opinion, that's a pretty far removed fish. They tend to be a lot more sensitive for people and hard to care for. But I'm not going to judge whether it's right or wrong. It is what it is. Because someone could say any goldfish is wrong compared to the wild carp they came from. So, yeah, I just choose not to keep them that often because they're a lot of work. Josh Aquatic asks, how easy is it to stunt goldfish growth? I think I didn't do enough water changes. And since I put my goldfish out in a pond a few months, they haven't really put on much growth. Well, it's pretty easy to stunt them. Like in the koi world, even at my store, I've got koi from Singapore that are about, let's say, 4 or 5 inches, and they're a year old. And then you can buy stuff that's been raised by professional breeders from Japan that's 1 year old but will be 10, 12 inches already. And you can never really make up that growth. Yeah, some of that's genetics, but also some of that is just cramped environments, stuff like that. So you might get a goldfish that maxes out at 12 inches instead of 16 or something like that. And when people say, a lot of times they'll say online that a comet maxes out at 10, 12 inches. I've seen some that are much larger. I tried to buy them. The store owner wouldn't sell them to me because they were the biggest ones he'd ever seen. But I do believe they get bigger if they're raised correctly and things like that. But I don't want to tell a goldfish story of I once saw a goldfish this big, but I have seen some monsters out there that, and I deal in like 1 foot long fish quite often. So when you see it, it's clearly bigger than a foot, but I didn't take a tape measure to it at the guy's store or anything like that. So, Stephanie asks, what's the water change schedule of the tank behind me? I actually just did a little bit of filming on that. And, so behind me, the goal is to do basically a pretty big water change, like maybe 70%, something like that, every week before I go on the live stream. But I didn't do one of those last week, and it was I think I was at work or something. No, I was the software. That's what it was. The software. I was trying to get the software. It was brand new to me, getting it all working before the live stream. It so I didn't do. Maybe I did do it. I can't remember. All the weeks have run in. That might be the week that I flooded this thing. I don't know, but. Basically, once a week is currently what it takes, and when I measured the water, the nitrates were still low, and so, when I say low, it was less than 20, it was about 10 parts per million, which is basically coming from the fertilizer that I'm putting in the aquarium to grow the plants. And, my tank's out there, I water change them basically 4 times a day, partial water changes. Well, the bins are 4 times a day, and then the other tanks are twice a day, but in general, I just try to keep nitrogen low and put fish in big tanks, or at least change a lot of water. It's a sliding scale for sure. Let's see here. Would Repashy Soylent Green be okay as a staple food with vegetable supplements? Sure, yeah, it would work just fine. I would say almost any Repashy food is pretty good, honestly. It doesn't have to specifically be the Soylent Green. All the blends are fairly similar. Yeah. Have I ever kept any, Kevin Walden, have I ever kept any goldfish big enough to start gobbling other fish? All the time. People try and mix goldfish with autocinclus, snails, corydoras, and I want to say at least once a month someone brings in a goldfish that I got to cut a fish out of its mouth. So like it's swallowed an autocinclus and, I got to cut it out and get that out of there and treat it and heal up the infections from, the fins going through the gills and things like that. But it happens all the time. Yeah. Charlie asks, are goldfish aggressive to any fish? I wouldn't say they're aggressive, but they're annoying in the fact that, like, let's say my Maboo puffer, if I put goldfish with it, they tend to go and mouth it, and that irritates them. So it's not an aggression thing, but they do mouth everything to see if they can put it in their mouth. And yeah, so goldfish are like every other fish in the world, except they tend to get large. Anything that fits in their mouth, it's going there. Stephanie asks, do I notice an increase in swim bladder problems with deeper tanks? I personally don't. I also don't notice any swim bladder problems from feeding floating food. I pretty much, besides the tank behind me, exclusively feed floating food, and I rarely ever run into a swim bladder problem. I maintain that most swim bladder problems actually come from overfeeding a goldfish, and just in general, we tend to overfeed, and it's not bad. I'm not like criticizing anyone, but realize that. Just like my dogs and most people's dogs and cats are overweight. We spoil animals with food because food is love, right? And we do that with our goldfish. We just tend to like goldfish a lot and they have their personality, so we keep giving them treats and we tend to overfeed them, and that's what gets them swim bladder, in my opinion. So if we, really bring back the food and be careful with it, I find we don't have a lot of problems. And so much so that when I run an auto feeder, it almost is no problems at all. So, yeah. Superfish asks, will fantails bully blackmores out of food since the fantails have better eyes and swimming capabilities? Sometimes, yeah, it's, we're using a lot of dog analogies here, but I think we can relate to it. I wouldn't say it's any more so than I have a yellow lab dog and a chihuahua. Some people would say, well, yeah, the yellow lab gets the majority of the food, but then you have another yellow lab that will only eat from his bowl, and the chihuahua only eats from his bowl, and it does just fine. And conversely, you can have, this chihuahua chases off anyone else trying to eat from any of the bowls. And so I think it's more of individual fish going together than it is this type of goldfish or this type of goldfish. Now, I do think there are some handicaps in the fact when we come to like bubble-eye goldfish and stuff like that, they just really don't do well with other types of goldfish. But for every rule, there's someone not following that rule doing just fine. So, but in general. Steenfot Aquatics asks, how come goldfish aren't as awesome as African cichlids? It's actually because they're twice as awesome. They're the most kept fish in the world, and, you know, they just don't get the coverage they deserve. And mostly it's because people can't breed goldfish, and people breed African cichlids and feel like they're on top of the world. It's way more difficult and more work to raise up goldfish than it is African cichlids, but that's what leads to African cichlid popularity, is their overabundance of breeding and the oops, I made more, aren't I special, as opposed to, you know, goldfish. Goldfish are the number one kept fish, and, you know, I'm hoping to bring some more, not popularity to it, because it's already popular, but more information and, you know, kind of like the guppies. Like, I'm full-fledged guppy guy. I will stand up for guppies, and everyone that loves guppies out there, and I'll do the same for goldfish. So, yeah. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll down, and let's see. What do I think about the gallons per fish versus tank versus pond footprint? There's a lot of debate on that. And I think it stems kind of from the same thing we were just talking about. Goldfish being the most popular are the most likely to be abused. Just, you know, if you take 1,000 people and you know that 500 of them will abuse a fish, you know, they're going to do that for African cichlids, bettas, community fish, goldfish, doesn't matter. But then when you realize that in the world maybe there's 1 million African cichlid people, but there's 40 million goldfish people, that's why we see so much abuse with the goldfish. Now, because we see it, we make up rules, and the rules might be, like the one that I might use, be 20 to 30 gallons of water per goldfish. It's completely arbitrary, because it's really based on water changes, and there's been universities done studies that have kept goldfish in 5-gallon tanks where the water flows through and leaves and never gets recirculated, and they were able to grow the fish so big that it was fish touching fish in the tank. So it proves that it's purely water quality, not the volume of water. That being said, in a practical standpoint, I feel like 20 to 30 gallons of water per goldfish is a pretty good metric. With the more water you add, the more leverage you have. So for instance, on 20 gallons of water, 1 goldfish, okay. At 40 gallons, 2 goldfish, okay. 55, maybe you're at 3 or 4 goldfish. At 100 gallons, maybe you can do 6 or 7. And once you start hitting 300, 500, 1,000 gallons of water, yes, you could get so many goldfish in there, it's a problem, but most people run into they can't afford to feed the tank. And I'm not saying you can't afford it, but let's say that at 1,000 gallons of water, and you have 200 fancy goldfish in there, so there's, you know, what is that? It's 5 gallons of water per, but you might be feeding $30 in food a day to those guys, and so you're limited by the food, which naturally limits how much waste is being produced. So, and in bigger tanks, people tend to do larger water changes and things like that. It kind of go, and it's not always true, but a hobbyist that has a 100-gallon aquarium usually is more dedicated to the hobby than the average person that might own, let's say, the Tetra 10-gallon starter kit. And so they tend to do water changes more often. So it's a good starting metric of 20 to 30 gallons per goldfish. More is always better. Rules can always be broken. And it's kind of one of those, when you know you can break the rule, then you can break the rule. But if you have to ask, that rule will do well enough to get you started. All right, what do we got here? Oh, I'm scrolling. So Noah asks, he wants to start a shrimp tank. Save that till the end of the stream when we're answering general questions, because we're doing just goldfish at the moment, Q&A. Josh Aquatic asks, as a follow-up question, will the stunting cause any major health issues long term? Only in extreme cases. That's where we get goldfish grow to the size of their aquarium. We can stop growing bones and things like that, or significantly slow it down, and you can get organ failure based on organs growing too large for the rib cage and things like that. But long term, you might still get 25 years out of that goldfish instead of 60 years or something. And you're much more likely that goldfish is going to die from a power outage or something like that than the abuse you've given it. All right, that's not fair. It's not that you've abused it, but then the detrimental effects it suffered thus far in its life, relatively minor compared to some other catastrophe like a parasite or just an illness or something like that. All right. Samantha R. says, do you have any trouble importing goldfish into the U.S.? It's tough to get good goldfish in Canada right now. I don't have any problems bringing them in. I would wager there's no problems getting them into Canada either, but someone doesn't want to pay the money to do it. That's usually the case. Like, and I don't know this for a fact because I'm not in Canada, but I can't imagine all the goldfish that are in Canada that are in, let's say, your box stores and stuff like that were bred in Canada, because almost no one does that. So they're coming in from out of Canada, which all goldfish can, whether it's a high-dollar goldfish or a cheap goldfish. But the problem is most shops go, well, if I can buy a goldfish for like $1, why would I buy one for like $70? Because my customer's not going to pay at least $140 for it. So I buy really cheap ones, and that's why it makes it hard to find good goldfish, because the profit margin's not nearly the same. So look at it this way. As a retailer, if I buy a goldfish for $70 and I sell it for $120, I made $50. That's a $50 profit, okay. But if I buy a goldfish for $1 and I sell it for $8, that's a huge profit. I do that over and over and over and over again, and most people can afford an $8 goldfish as opposed to a $120 goldfish. So that's why you don't see a lot of high-end stuff in there. But I hope that changes at some point. Let's see. Should you quarantine plants? KG Tropical's video, we saw plants directly going into a tank. Do I recommend that with any source? Well, it kind of pertains to goldfish in the fact that, can plants get these goldfish sick or vice versa? Everything is possible for sure. Optimally, should plants be quarantined? Probably yes. Likelihood of people doing that, really low. Because it's not like with a fish, right? So with a fish, you can kind of put it in another bucket of water or tank or something like that, and it'll do okay. But most people don't have strong lighting, CO2 injection, a well-established tank with fertilizer and stuff like that to keep that plant thriving, so it usually does best going straight into a tank. I would say it's an accepted risk that people feel is pretty low in in the scheme of things. The risk you take on a plant is really low. Freddie Thompson, how do you deal in koi mostly? Do you buy them small and grow them, or just sell them straight off? I do a bunch of all of it. I don't do much growing of the koi. I don't think there's much money in that, unless you're dealing in very high-end koi. But mostly I bring it in, get it healthy, and just sell it, and I buy the sizes that people are looking for. And I do the same thing with goldfish. I'm not sure. I currently haven't devised a system that makes sense to buy small goldfish and grow them up to profit. So the other part of that is most small goldfish are very bad quality, and here's why. Because let's imagine you're a goldfish farm and you're making tons of goldfish, and every week a goldfish stays in your care. Let's say it costs you a dime, So let's say at the 6-month mark, you go through the goldfish and you go, oh, this one's got a bent fin, sell it off for cheap. There's no point putting more and more and more money into it to grow it bigger if it's already got bent fins. And so let's say every month on that group of goldfish that happens. So the smaller the fish is, the more deformities, or the more glaring the deformity was. And then the bigger the fish gets, if it's still looking really good and doesn't have any deformities, the more expensive it gets. And it makes sense to continue growing it to get more money. So that's why, in general, small goldfish aren't good quality. From a private breeder or something like that, that's a completely different story, but we're just talking about big commercial fish farms at this point. Let's see. Samuel says, minimum size aquarium for goldfish, and what type of fish can you keep with them? I would say the minimum being, I'm going to say 20 gallons. And what fish can you keep with them? In my opinion, anything that doesn't fit in their mouth and won't beat on them. So I've got some customers that keep like rummy-nosed tetras with them. They do just fine. I've got other customers that say plecostomus are great, like a bristlenose. Then I've got other customers that say, oh, they're sucking on my goldfish because they weren't getting enough food. So there is a lot of things, but I would say common things would be more goldfish, dojo loaches, bristlenose plecostomus, Japanese trapdoor snails. I'm trying to think of other stuff that I know can work well. I mean, they're high-fin banded sharks if you can keep it cold enough. Pandagara. Trying to think of, that's probably all I got time. I'm going to open this door. If the audio gets crazy bad, someone let me know. But it's getting way too hot in here. So one sec. I'm going to scroll down and check to see if you guys are like, wow, audio is absolutely terrible. And then, if not, then I'll continue. If I can scroll down here. There we go. So, I just skipped a bunch of questions, not trying to intentionally skip anyone. Ask it slowly again. So, Stephanie says, what are my thoughts on hydrogen peroxide dips for external parasites such as flukes? I've seen it recommended 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 8 to 9 parts of water for 10 seconds. I don't know, Stephanie. I haven't done that dip, but I wonder, do I do that, or do I use potassium permanganate, or should I just use something like Clout? The problem with hydrogen peroxide, it's going to kill, and it's going to, if you've ever used hydrogen peroxide on yourself, it dries out your skin. It's going to do the same thing to that fish. And I wonder if it does harm. I mean, obviously the flukes do harm, but, I'm not sure I would tackle it that way. I'm not saying I know how. I know how I would tackle it. I would start with Clout. And then after that, I would move to other things first. Or not first, but after that, I think. So just reminding people, we're currently only answering questions about goldfish. At the end, we'll open it up to anything, any topic, but we're keeping on goldfish for now. So Brendan says he's been keeping Cory cats in his pond with goldfish, no deaths yet, and it's year 3. Awesome. I would say if those goldfish can ever get big enough, you could run into a problem with them choking on the Cory cats. But as long as they don't fit in their mouth right now, you're probably good to go. Why are goldfish so difficult to breed at home? Mostly just because people aren't ready to spawn an egg scatter. It's much harder. So yeah, you can set up the mops, you can get them to spawn, but then raising the fry takes quite a bit of work and lots of water changes and things like that. And I won't say you couldn't do it. I'll just say most people don't. That's more what it is, compared to like an African cichlid person. So it tends to happen out in ponds where people are like, ooh, I just oopsed into making more goldfish because you had enough sediment and things like that to raise them up. But yeah, I mean, there's people that do it. I haven't really done it. I mean, I've oopsed some goldfish and made some, but never intentionally. And I want to play with that someday. I just haven't yet. Flynn asks, how long can goldfish live in optimal conditions or ideal conditions? I want to say I was reading an article that the oldest confirmed goldfish is over 60 at this point, where they can actually track the lineage, but they're reported to live longer than that, but no one can really like prove that theirs is that old, you know. So, yeah. Let's see. Best to keep goldfish in heated aquariums, room temperature, or cool it? That's a good question, Kevin. In my opinion, it is best to use them with an aquarium heater. And the reason is this. Not so much that they need the high temperatures, but people tend to feed their goldfish the same amount of food every day. So if let's say I've got one goldfish and I feed him 5 pellets every day. Okay? In the middle of summer, metabolism's racing. It might be 80 degrees in that aquarium. But then in the middle of winter, at room temperature, it might be 65, and we still feed it those 5 pellets. That's when it tends to get bloat and swim bladder problems because its metabolism can't handle the food we're feeding it. With an aquarium heater, it's going to stay at least, let's say set it to 72, it'll always be at least 72 in there, with, you know, a lot of books referencing that 75 degrees is known to be the optimal growth temperature for show goldfish and things like that. Now, that's not optimal for longevity or anything like that. It's just optimal for kind of making the biggest fish you can for a show. Justin Lloyd says, every Blackmore telescope goldfish I ever purchased damages its eyes eventually, or its eyes get eaten by another goldfish. Is it just a luck thing, or do I have to keep the fish by itself? Well, you can definitely curb what's going on there. Make sure you have intake sponges on intakes. Make sure you don't have sharp rocks and sticks. They do have poor vision or worse vision. And then make sure you're not putting them with super aggressive fish. Like a shabunkin could be much more aggressive, and it's stronger than a Blackmore telescope would be. So you can limit your risk. I don't know that you can ever like make it so. I mean, you can keep just one goldfish and he pokes his own eye out on a stick. So yeah, I'm going to answer this question because I thought it was clever. KG Cichlid says, keep one, kill one, breed one, and they all got to be goldfish. So if I had to kill one, I would probably get rid of the Jinkin because I don't agree with them plucking the scales to get the color correctly. So I'd kill that one. If I got to keep one forever, I guess the kill one, I have to kill one that's in my possession, right? So I can't just get rid of the Jinrin scale, or not Jinrin scale, but Jinkin. I would choose Ryukins. They're my least favorite. And it's not like that Ryukin I have right there I actually like, but Ryukins in general for me always seem to be more aggressive than other types of goldfish in my experience. So I don't have that soft of a heart for them. Keeping one forever, I guess if I'm not in love with any particular one, so I'm going to pull out the grandma card. I've got some goldfish out in the bins for my grandma that I think it would be pretty cool if I just had those forever. Like, yeah, this thing's like 50 years old at this point. It was my grandma's. And then the breed one, so I'm not even sure this actually exists because I've never seen one in person. There's rivalry on whether it does or doesn't, but if it does exist, I want to breed the Siamese doll goldfish because I think small-sized goldfish would be amazing. So that's how I'm answering that question. Adam Till asks, how does a hobbyist choose good goldfish stock? I would say mostly look at the fin structure when you're at the store. So if you're looking down the back of the goldfish, make sure all the fins match. That's the first thing. 'Cause a lot of times you go, oh man, this one's all, twisted up. And then make sure that the peduncle, which is the tail fin, is in line with the spine. It's not over to one side. And then, like on a comet or a shabunkin, make sure the tail stands up well. Like this shabunkin, I love its color pattern. Where's he at? But his top fin doesn't stay erect. Not his top fin, but his tail fin, the top part, doesn't stay erect all the time. So I wish that was a little better. But overall, think about it like choosing a dog. you go to the pound and you fall in love with one and you keep it. That's what you should be doing with goldfish, I think. I mean, unless you're purely going to competition level. And at that point, you're probably buying from seasoned breeders. So, how big is my goldfish tank behind me? With sump, it's a little over 200 gallons of water. Favorite substrate for goldfish tanks? Personally, I like cichlid sand, Carib Sea cichlid sand, which is crushed up coral, but much finer. And in fact, today, and you guys will probably see this on a video, but there's a little extra like whiteness down here. It's kind of blowing out because the video and the light. But that is extra crushed coral I had to add to this tank to buffer the pH, because goldfish really do well at 7.5 or higher pH, and I'm only 6.8 out of the tap, and I was down at 6.2, and so I can get a lot better color out of these goldfish if I can get that pH up higher. Let's see, scroll down a little more here. I know I'm skipping stuff, and I apologize. I do apologize for that already. But just, ask it again slowly. Fort Wayne Fish Tanks asks, how big of an aquarium for 2 goldfish, a fantail, and a ranchu? One, I wouldn't keep just 2 goldfish because you're going to get one that dominates the other, even if it's very mildly. But I would say somewhere between 30 gallons and 40 gallons, like a 40 breeder or a 29. 29 with lots and lots of water changes, 40 breeder with less water changes. Stephanie S. asks, have I ever bred goldfish? Only accidentally and only in small numbers. Jared Leach asks, what do you feed goldfish fry? Very small food. I mean, it'd be great if you can get green water to start them out in, but infusoria, vinegar eels, baby brine shrimp, live baby brine after a few days. Most of those things will do it. Samuel Garrell asks, how cold do my tanks have to be? I'm in Arizona and the house stays 78 to 80 in the summer and 70 in the winter. The tanks are always 76 to 80. I would say if you could keep them at 78, you'll do okay. If you can keep them at 75, you'll do a little better. You can blow a fan or something across the top of the water to cool it down a little bit. But, I'm not going to say it's life or death at 78, but they start getting a little uncomfortable, some strains. Critter Catcher, how do you tell the difference between a common and comet goldfish? Well, those two are the same, the commons and the comets. If you're talking about a Sarasa comet, the Sarasa is explaining the color, and that's usually that deeper, vibrant red or orange, and that in itself is going to tell you the difference, is that color, and typically a Sarasa comet will have longfin gene, where a normal comet doesn't have longfin gene. Is it possible to keep hillstream loaches with goldfish? Douglas, I don't know that. I want to try it, but I haven't done it, so I don't want to say yes, totally, but I have a suspicion that it could do well, and I want to try it, yeah. Fish Lover asks, what are ways to protect koi and goldfish in a pond from birds like cranes? For cranes, a couple of things you can do, and no method is tried and true, by the way, so just know that. But you can do like the fishing line trick, because cranes don't like to step over things, so they kind of just walk, and then when they hit that, they don't like it. You can also hang like a disco ball, and it's moving, creating all this sparkling light. Cranes usually will land up in a tree or on a neighbor's house or something and watch the pond for a day or two before they even land. And they don't like things they don't understand. And so you're trying to make it less attractive to go to your pond than someone else's pond. Let's see here. Marco says, I have 6 goldfish, 9 yellow electric labs in a 55-gallon tank. I only use vitamin C for water changes. What do you think? I mean, if that's a serious question, vitamin C is perfectly fine, and it's known to feed goldfish oranges and things like that. If you're just trolling me, good job. You wasted all of our time. Morgan Williams, I've been raising slim body goldfish, but want to get a Ryukin tank. Is there a big difference in care? I don't know if there's a big difference. The digestional tract is different. But I would say if you're really thriving with slim body goldfish, you're already a leg up for most people when it comes to the Ryukins. I feel like Ryukins are a little more aggressive, and I feel like they should have some more vegetable in their diet just because their digestional tract is so much clumped up in comparison. But I think you'll do well with them. David's Fish Tank says, what should I do for Popeye for a goldfish? First, look at the water. The most common cause for Popeye is elevated nitrogen in the water. Assuming that that is taken care of and good, the next most common thing is a bacterial infection behind the eye causing it to swell. So, most times, the treatment is get the water really clean, put some erythromycin in there, which you can get from my website or anywhere else, and get that working. If that doesn't cure it, then you could have a tumor behind the eye or something like that. But, I want to say 95% of Popeye cases I ever see is there was either A, an injury to the eye and poor water quality, or B, just poor water quality, and both of those lead to the bacterial infection behind the eye. All right. Reef Spy says, one of my goldfish changed color from orange to white. Is this normal? Yes, it's very, very normal for goldfish to change color quite a bit, just like koi. So when you buy a goldfish, let's say it's only this big, realize that if it's a fancy, it's going to get this big, and if it's a normal goldfish, it's going to get this big. It's still so small. All goldfish kind of start out brown, then they turn black, then they can turn orange, then they can still go yellow, white, back to black, any combination of those. So it is pretty normal. Just like bettas change a lot of color when people buy them, yeah. Michael Johnson, what is the nicest fancy goldfish? I have been considering a single lion head for a 110-gallon tank, but want a species that will grow to a decent size. So if you're going to do just one goldfish for 110, in my opinion, I would do a Shabunkin or a Sarasa Comet. Just because, one, they're going to get massive, and that's going to be awesome. They're super personable, and why not utilize that tank? Now, if you really like a lion head or ranchu, do that for sure. But I would say if it's only one fish, I like the normal. I like Shabunkins actually for personable, being personable. Riley Bannon says, do I have names for my goldfish? Not yet. I do name a lot of my pets, but don't yet. Besides, what is that one I was calling Mutant Mouth on video the other day, but yeah. Aaron Philly, how should I go about switching from flakes to pellets? My recommendation would be just make the switch. If they're not eating the pellets, scoop them back out and wait again until the next day. Like, let them go on their hunger strike if they want, but eventually they're going to switch and it'll be easy. I feed a lot of, like right behind me, because I have the overflow, I'm feeding Cichlid Excel, but otherwise, to like all the fish out there, I feed my omnivore blend because it's a higher quality food, but I can't, I won't say can't. I don't have it milled in sinking form because I wouldn't sell enough of it to make it worth my while. Kevin Walden, I keep mine heated, and my goodness, they grow over an inch a month. Comments, that is. I like them to have stable temps. I completely agree, Kevin. That stable environment, it doesn't matter what kind of fish you're keeping. It always comes back down to keep a good environment, keep it stable, and fish thrive. More so than any one parameter being perfect, just keep things stable and doing well, and fish tend to grow pretty quick, yeah. John Zim, where do all our goldfish historically come from, and what did they look like? Ooh, this is hitting me right in the bad subject area, because I get bad with this. They basically, and someone's going to correct me nonstop here, but I'm not reading you the Wikipedia article, but basically, emperors in China, it was a source of, I don't know, like, to display your wealth and your power. You'd get goldfish developed while you were in. So if you were in your power reign for 50 years and you got a new goldfish, it left you a legacy, right? But it all came from grass carp, and they kept being, changed and modified, and slowly over the years, and it became more and more popular. And that's why they got popular over the last, let's say, 150 years is because it was a status symbol of royalty and things like that. And turns out they're just awesome fish, but that's kind of what led that whole thing. And, way back when, it's one of the few fish we could keep alive in captivity, yeah, great, like, I'm an emperor and I've got neon tetras, but they die every other week. That doesn't really show how strong of an emperor you are when everything you touch dies, even things you wanted to live. So, goldfish were a good way to illustrate that as well. Let's see. Faith, how do you gauge how much to feed goldfish since they always act hungry? I would say, personally, you're better off underfeeding than overfeeding, and you're way better off to feed more often than once a day. So, and higher quality food. So, like, I can tell you today, I put in 2 ounces of brine shrimp is what I fed these guys. Now, I had to count my fish. I think I've got 9 goldfish in there. And so 9 goldfish over 2 ounces, that's basically 1/5 of an ounce of food per fish. Very low. But you could feed something like a ton of vegetables. Think of it like a kid and think of the food we feed as candy. They're going to eat as much candy as you'll ever give them. Now, if you offer them up a ton of duckweed or vegetables, they're going to stop when they're full going, nah, I've had enough. So you can't really go too much with vegetable, but take the proteins and stuff like that lightly. And, how much they eat in 5 minutes or something like that, it's not really a good rule because you don't want them to eat super fast. Like, that's what can cause bloating as well. Like, let me eat all these pellets in 2 minutes and now I'm bloated. Instead, you'd rather have them eat, like, in an optimal world, they'd eat 1 pellet every 30 minutes or something like that throughout the entire time the light's on. But it's hard to make that happen. So you got to kind of work with a system that's going to work for your tanks. Are goldfish in the carp family? They totally are, Petroman. Nosy says, why isn't there a good quality goldfish in Europe and America than in Asia? Because all the farms are in Asia. And the U.S., I don't know about Europe because I'm not there, but the U.S., as a whole population, do not value goldfish. We just don't. And that's evident in the fact that we sell really crappy goldfish in PetSmarts, Petco's, chain stores, things like that. Now, that being said, I have lower tier goldfish at my store, and I have higher tier. The cheapest goldfish I sell is $20 because I have to import them from China. Not all of them from China. Some come from Singapore. But I only want to... Like, when I'm looking at a wholesale list, I only buy the highest quality available. And so, let's say you're looking at a 2-inch Ranchu. They're going to have A grade, B grade, C grade, D grade. Like, I only want the A grade. I only want the best of whatever I'm buying. And yeah, you might go, well, D grade's 1/5 of the price. Just buy those. People buy them anyway. They probably will buy them anyway. But that doesn't further the hobby, and that doesn't give you a good reputation for having good fish. And that's the reputation I want. Let's see. Kevin Walden, have I shown Dorcula the black moral with the mutant mouth? I have, and I think she's going to steal it from me and put it in the tank in the house. So maybe that thing will start converting slowly to goldfish. Because she asked me, she's like, can we put that in there? I go, well, not really. But because the mouth is a mutant mouth, it might work because it can't fit anything in its mouth. It can fit some food, but like the fish, I think it'd be okay. And we don't have anything in there that's really aggressive. Now, it could be long-term that the roseline sharks went after it, and if we did, we would clearly take it out, but I think it would be okay. Brian asks, what is the average age for goldfish? Like when you're buying them at a pet store? Probably 8 months to a year. Otherwise, how long they can live? That's up to our husbandry, really, how well we can keep fish. Honolulu Tita asks, are goldfish basically different shaped koi, and can you keep them in the same tank? Well, I got to dissect that question a little bit. So one, really koi shouldn't be kept in tanks long term because they're going to outgrow it. But let's assume we're talking about a pond. Yes, they can live in the same water. Yes, they they're essentially differently shaped koi. Essentially, I mean they are different, but they're so close that yes, they are different, and they can. But I would say koi and fancy goldfish don't go well, but single-tailed goldfish like comets, Sarasa comets, commons, shibunkins, and things like wakens all do well with koi as well. But like if you take a pearl scale goldfish and you put that with a koi, it's never gonna get to eat. It's gonna live a horrible life. So you got to be a little careful there. All right, let's see. KG Cichlids asks, do I sell feeder goldfish? No. And a couple of reasons for that. One, it's the best way to lose money as a store, and I try not to lose money, so I don't set myself up for losing money. Two, all it does is make people want to buy that fish. So if I have a really healthy, let's say I had the best goldfish on the planet, and it was $5 in a tank, but then right below it I have goldfish for 10 cents, 99 out of 100 people will always buy that 10-cent goldfish going, oh, it's cheaper, I'm going to kill it anyway. That literally is the mentality in a pet store for most people, and so, that's just not going to work. So I don't. Let's see. Before commercial foods, what did they feed their goldfish and koi that they wanted to keep? I don't know that answer. I would suspect it was things like leftover food and bread and vegetables and things. But, I don't know that answer, so I don't want to go, more into it than that. Lesson Lie says, which fish is more hardy, comet goldfish or fancy goldfish? In my opinion, comets and shibunkins, or what I like to call a slim body or single-tailed goldfish, tend to be easier for people. Flynn's Fish asks, are there any goldfish I won't buy because of ethical issue? That's the jinkin. I just don't like the scale plucking they do. I think that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. And maybe Siamese dolls. And you're going, wait a second, you want to breed that one? Well, there's one camp says Siamese dolls are just super stunted goldfish. And another camp says they're actually bred that way. I don't know the answer. And if I was to breed them, I would know the answer. But that's why I say maybe Siamese dolls, because I don't want to, oh yeah, it's a good thing, let's stunt fish. This kind of ties into that. John Martinez asks, what goldfish would I avoid due to health or ethical issues? Which one do you recommend quality-wise? I think most people should avoid bubble eye and celestial eye and pearl scale goldfish. They're what I classified as like special needs. They almost have to have tanks dedicated to themselves. You really got to be careful. They're pretty bad at finding food. They're easy to get damaged. They're easy to get sick. Those are the ones I say are more for advanced hobbyists. You really got to know what you're doing with goldfish before those start making some sense. But, it's like if you've never kept a dog, or maybe that's not right. Maybe you've never seen a dog before. The first dog you get maybe shouldn't be a wolfhound or a Great Dane or something. Maybe it should be like, oh yeah, it's a chocolate lab or something easy, a German Shepherd, or, I know there's people in both those camps going, no, German Shepherds aren't just easy. I'm just saying, I'm not sure what the best to start with is, but it probably wouldn't be those three goldfish I listed. Lessa Olivera, would you suggest sponge filters for goldfish? Totally. I love it. Works well. I mean, in addition to other stuff works good too, but sponge filters are very effective because they don't create a lot of flow, especially for the fancy goldfish. Rob D says, best way to breed bubble eye goldfish? I don't have that answer in my back pocket because I've never bred them, so don't know. Adam Till, how do the grading systems you were describing work? What differentiates an A from a D? Well, mostly, it's kind of funny. An A grade is supposed to be the best of the batch, right? And then B would be worse, C would be worse, and D would be worse than that, let's say. And they go deeper sometimes. But there's really nothing stopping. Like, let's say I pay for an A grade from them shipping me a C grade because they were out of B and A. And then I can just go, oh, these are pretty bad quality, honestly. You know, so you got to kind of build a relationship with the wholesaler or farm, and then call them on it when you're just like, these goldfish are garbage. Like, you go, so I bought your top quality, and you're telling me this is the best you produce? Because if this is the best you produce, I don't want any more of it. I don't want your fish. And then they go, well, we'll give it to you for free or something like that. And you both well know that was not your A grade, because I've ordered it before and it was amazing, and this batch was terrible. Let's see. Oh, geez, I just skipped a bunch. Screw it. I'll just keep reading anyway. Ridiculous stories of people trying to buy goldfish from us, wedding decor, party gifts, stuff like that. Haven't really had any party gifts. At a place I used to work, we sold a bunch to a bar. You know, so bars, it's all the rage in the bar scene to do goldfish races. So you set up gutters, and you put a goldfish in your gutter, and you squirt it with a squirt gun to get it to swim, and the one that makes it to the end wins, right? It's horribly inhumane and not good, and they tend to kill all the goldfish they get because they're only buying low-quality feeders, and they're not setting up tanks, stuff like that. But when I was working for someone else, they wanted to do it and wanted me to sell it to them, so I did. But I don't really have too many bad stories from people buying it from us. We usually just lecture them on how they really should need more water and blah, 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 blah. And if they don't really conform to that, then I just go, maybe you don't need one. You know, so yeah. KG Cichlids, what's the most common asked goldfish question at my store? It would have to be, it's not even a question, it's a statement. They tell me, goldfish only grow to the size of the aquarium or bowl. You know, and they don't ask the question. They tell you that when you're trying to educate them. You know, they just go, oh, you know, and I always want to say, like, I'm glad you could tell me. I never knew that before. Thank you. But anyway, freshwater fix. Are there any dwarf fancy goldfish or cool ones under 6 inches max? I don't know. I feel like a lot of these fancy goldfish, you'd be lucky to get past 6 inches because it would take quite a long time. That being said, in theory, the Siamese doll would fit that description. I've never seen one in person. I've seen them on wholesale lists. I've driven to wholesalers to buy them, and they didn't have them, so I don't know. Let's see. I know... Yeah, so it's not butter. Ask that question later when we're doing the open Q&A. Right now, it's only goldfish, so just hang in there till later, buddy. Are white cloud mountain minnows compatible with goldfish? Kind of. Usually they'll get swallowed at some point, but you can keep them. They like the same water. But know that long term, those mountain minnows probably aren't hanging around there. Petroman asks, how many goldfish would you recommend for a 90-gallon tank? Well, bare minimum, personally, I would say 4. You know, if you wanted to go heavier, maybe you do 6, something like that. But it's all a sliding scale of, like, the more you have, the less quality you'll get out of them. So, like, 1 goldfish will be amazing long-term in there. 20 goldfish in there long-term will be pretty stunted and not that good unless you're really, really diligent about those water changes. And so, if you're asking me what I would keep in a 90, I probably, this is me just being honest here, I would probably keep, like, 7 or 8 of them in there. That's just what I would probably do. Freddie Thompson asks, how much flow do goldfish like? Well, fancy goldfish don't like much flow at all. They don't. Where comets, the Sarasa comets, the commons, and the shabunkins, they can handle quite a bit of flow, actually. But you still want them to have some place they can rest. But yeah, quite a bit. Would Petco and PetSmart goldfish already be stunted? I don't have a local fish store that sells goldfish. That's a tricky question, Superfish, just because they could be stunted. It depends on how fast they're selling them. But like at a PetSmart or Petco, they usually don't stay around too long because they just kill them. So, you know, they might get new shipments every week. And so they're probably not very stunted at all because anything that sticks around there for a long time is eventually just going to catch some kind of funk. Justin Lloyd says, what's my opinion on koi mets? I don't know what koi mets are, so if you can clarify that, maybe I have an opinion. Flynn's fish form. If I put a goldfish in a pond through the winter, would it survive? It depends on where you live, depends on how deep the pond is and what your ground freezing temperature is, and if it's fancier or a common, or, so if it's a single body, they're much hardier over the winters than fancies tend to be. KG Cichlids, is there such thing as goldfish breeding with different fish? I bet you there's some carp combos that could happen technically, but otherwise, like, you're not going to breed a catfish in them or something like that. I would say it'd be pretty difficult to do. Yep, Ronin Aquaculture hit the nail on the head with, winter temps, pond depth, that type of thing. Yep. Honolulu Tita, will the goldfish in the tank behind you grow much bigger eventually? Yeah, they should. If I do my job right, they should just be monsters. And just reading your name makes me jealous, because some of the best goldfish in the world come out of Hawaii. And it's because you can grow goldfish outside there 24/7, 365 days a year. There's some really nice goldfish breeders out in Hawaii, so you've got some nice access to some stuff out there. Is an elephant nose a type of goldfish? It is not. How would I set up an outdoor pond for fancy goldfish, or would I? I would. I'd probably, if I was doing it, I would probably do it so that, let's say, like the ponds I have outside, let's say I have a 360-gallon tub outside, I'd probably keep them out there for like 8 months out of the year, and then I'd have another 360-gallon pond inside, like in my garage or something. I'd move them in there for the winter and then bring them back out, because natural sunlight does wonders for colors on fish. Plus all the bugs and stuff like that. You can't really beat nature, honestly. All right, let's scroll down some more. Could you cross goldfish carp with carp, and would the offspring be fertile? Critter catcher, I'm not sure. One, it'd probably depend on the carp, and two, I don't know. Like when you cross guppies and mollies, for instance, they're sterile when they come out. I'm trying to think who probably who would know that answer better. Like, I'm trying to think. I could probably ask Dr. Tim Miller-Morgan when I see him next about something like that. He might know, because he's pretty good with that kind of stuff. But I'm not sure, honestly. William Mitchell, what's the worst type of goldfish? Probably the feeder fish, just because it's the most mistreated. Yeah. Josh's Aquatics, do you think fantails would work well with common goldfish? They certainly could. It's done a lot. Half the people... part of the problem with the goldfish community is you've got people that know nothing, and then you've got people that claim to know everything, and then you've got this big section of middle people that just keep their mouths shut because they don't want to get in the middle of it. But I would say, yes, it could totally work, and it could also be a total disaster, but I would wager with a big enough tank and good husbandry, you have a perfectly good chance of it working decent. Are common carp and koi the same thing? Kind of, but not really. I mean, they're highly bred to get what we call koi today. Richard James asks, what is the best temperature? Probably 74, 75 degrees for fancy goldfish. Ryan Poss says, can you keep 2 fancy goldfish in a 10-gallon tank? Not for very long, and I don't recommend it. Like, honestly, if you're doing your job right, they should way have outgrown that 10-gallon, probably in somewhere between 1 and 3 months, depending on how well you're growing them. But it all depends on what size. Like if they're already big, no, not at all. But don't let me stop your hobby. Realize if you did 100% water change every day on that 10-gallon, you might get 6 or 8 months out of it before it was a disaster. Noah asks, can you unstunt a goldfish? You can't. You can continue to grow it, but missed growth just never comes back. So let's say in the first 8 months of life, you can grow a goldfish to 8 inches, but you only got yours to 3 inches. You're never making up that 5 inches again. So you might max out. You're like, this goldfish only ever got 8 inches total after being 20 years old. So you can't really make up for it. David's fish tanks. How do you cure Popeye? Make sure the water's super clean and use something like erythromycin. We kind of covered that a little bit earlier. Watch it again if you want a more in-depth. Joseph Pinkson asks, thoughts on Tosikin and where to get them? There's not a lot of places to get them. I want to say the only spot I could think off the top of my head would have been, Jeff Hiller on Aquabid, but I'm not even sure his are like crazy high quality. I think he's just the only guy that's selling them or making it easy to get. But I don't really see him on lists or anything like that. So, yeah. All right. Do I sell high-fin goldfish? I'm not really familiar with high-fin goldfish. I mean, some of the Sarasas and Trabunkins have really high fins, but I don't know of like a strain just called high-fin goldfish. Are there any plants that can survive coexisting with goldfish? Yeah. For the most part. I mean, I say yeah, but then I'm like, well, there are some goldfish that are just really hard on plants. But as you can see, not fully planted, but planted tank behind me, Anubias, Java fern, African fern, Vallisneria, all those ones are pretty decent for goldfish tanks. How large of a pond do you need to keep goldfish year-round outside, and do you ever need to bring koi inside? So that question depends, again, on where you live in the world and what your ground, like, frozen depth is. But, like, for instance, I think everywhere in the U.S., if you had an 8-foot pond depth, I think you can do it. You know, that being said, like, the frost line here in Washington's only 18 inches, so I might be able to get away with, like, 3 or 4 feet deep. So you got to look into that. Is it okay to keep fancy goldfish with tiger Oscar cichlids? I realize that you're making a joke, and it kind of just makes you look dumb because, yes, you totally can. You know, you're thinking I'm just going to rip into you, but some of the best fish to put with, like, big, messy fish is goldfish because they eat everything. And so, you know, most people, think tiger Oscars are aggressive, but they're actually very timid compared to most other Oscars. And goldfish are very clean because they're kind of like a Geophagus cichlid in that they will constantly comb the gravel and clean up. So there's some of the best fish you can put with other big, messy fish. So if you have, for instance, a clown knife that's a foot long and can only eat fish that are 6 inches or smaller, and you put it with a foot-long goldfish, they're actually great tank mates because that goldfish will constantly break his waist down. Same thing with, I'm trying to think, arowanas, it works really well for. It works well for Oscars. It works well. Anything that's not going to physically go and beat on something, which Oscars typically aren't that. They're not known to go just beat on things to beat on it. So much so as like a jaguar cichlid. Like, that's not going to work. Optimal water temperature for goldfish, 74, 75 is considered optimal by professionals. Are koi and common carp the same thing? No, they're not. Did you think about putting a bug zapper above my koi pond also? Yes, I did, KG Cichlids. The problem there is I don't have a really good place to mount it. Like, everyone chimed in on the video going, oh, what are you going to do if it falls into the water? Like, obviously, I already accounted for that, and I made sure that thing can never come off. You literally have to rip the piece of wood off to get that thing to come down at this point. But over at my koi pond, I would have to do it like put a metal pole in the ground, and it'd be kind of, once the wind caught it, it could fall, and so I haven't done that yet. If I ever move my pond or dig the real pond, I'll take that into consideration for sure. William Mitchell asked, do I sell bigger lion heads or ranchus? Yeah, typically they're about $90, and they're, probably about body size like this. Like, I don't know. It's hard to put, like, a size on it over, video like this. But, yeah, we do. We carry some higher-end stuff for sure. Things like this guy, which this guy is, like, back to his full glory, by the way. He had, like, a little bit of a growth on his forehead. And that, I think, was just stress from shipping and being in a smaller tank in my store and things like that. But something like that, like all his brothers and sisters, which I can't buy more of, by the way, because they're seasonal. I'm waiting for the next season to get big ones. But something like that, we sold his brothers and sisters for $180 a piece. But, realize that guy is massive. I scrolled up here. Let me scroll back down. What do I think the upper limit of healthy hardness, KH, and GH for fancies? We have Lake Tanganyika type conditions here. Oof, that's a little bit of a hard one. I don't know the exact range, but I feel like they'll do well. And that's because, in Florida, where a lot of domestic goldfish are raised, they have crazy hard water there. Like so hard that the sponge filters are actually rock at that point. They don't move anymore. And they really do well. I actually think that all those minerals in the water help, and that's why, for koi ponds and stuff, they recommend koi clays and stuff like that. So I don't know what the optimal is, but I feel like your water would be fine. All right, I want to read that one. That one was a quarantine question. Oh, no. Here we go. There we go. Superfish. Can I quarantine 3 fancy goldfish in a 15-gallon, or should I get them and quarantine them one at a time? I personally would... Well, it depends on the size of the goldfish, but this question doesn't state it, so I'm just going to go from there. I personally would do all 3 at once. It'll save you money on meds, and you're not going to feed them that much during quarantine anyway because you're going to be stressed out from the meds, so usually you can get by on it just fine. Michael Tett, you're asking a question that's not related to goldfish, so ask it later in the stream when we open it up to live Q&A. Or not live, but anything goes. When goldfish are stunted, are they suffering and unhappy or just small? Well, I would say during the process of them getting stunted, they are suffering and probably unhappy. But afterwards, it depends on how long the abuse went on for. But I would say if you improve their situation, generally they're a lot happier. How many gallons is the goldfish tank behind me? It's over 210 with a sump. Justin Lloyds, your grandmother had a 15-year-old comet that was only 6 inches. Yeah, I mean, that's some stunting. That's what happens, and it's the most sold fish in the world. There's going to be lots of, unfortunate cases. Stephanie S., have I had any experience with any of the online goldfish sellers? I haven't. There's not that many left of them. Most of them got out of the business. I would say there's Dandy Arandas, but I've never ordered anything from him because he's never had anything that I wanted. I was looking last night at Blackwater Creek, I think. They had some strains I'm interested in. I'm interested in the Sonke Shubunkins and then what they're calling the black opals, which to me looks very similar to this black and white Shubunkin I have, but I haven't ordered from any of them. So I can't say if one's great or bad. I would say most people say they like their fish from Dandy Aranda. I feel like I won't say a lot, but I feel like some are way overpriced. That thing's I'd sell that thing for $20, and it's he wants $120 for it. So, but when you have no other options, do I think it could be a good option from them? Sure, yeah. Would a 5-foot, 1 foot deep, 1 foot wide planter be fine to turn into a pond? You live in Florida. I would think it would get too hot. I think with that shallow of water, it's going to get too hot. But could it be done? Maybe. I might try it, but I would be keeping a very close eye on that. Pokemon trainer Will asks, what substrate do I use in my goldfish tank behind me? It's a mix of some smaller, grayish sand type of stuff, which it's a very coarse sand, and crushed coral is what I use in the tank behind me. Rogue Shadow, you're not asking a goldfish question. Save it till later. Hey, thanks for hanging out, Superfish. Yeah, go walk that dog. He'll love it. Flynn's Fish Forum, can goldfish live peacefully with swordtails, platies, or guppies? I feel like you could pull it off with platies. Swordtails tend to be a little aggressive. Guppies will probably just end up in their mouth at some point. Dylan Bogus asks, how old is the big orange white goldfish? So the short body Ryukin that is right there is probably about 3 years old. And I say probably because I've only had it for 6 months. So, yeah. My wife chimes in with that shallow tank. Yeah, you'd have predator problems of, cats, raccoons, stuff like that. In general, I think it'd be hard to make it work, but you could technically make it cat-proof and all that. But it's one of those, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, and is the least amount of work. So, Josh's Aquatics, for my stock tank fantail question, I wanted to add that I live in GA, so I never get more than about an inch of ice. I mean, I find that fantails and just fancies in general aren't as hardy as a single-tailed, but you could certainly try it. The problem is you can never know until you try it, right? And if you'll be devastated when that fish dies, don't try it. If you could go, okay, I learned a bunch, and it works or doesn't work, it's worth trying. So Ricky J says, I have two 125-gallon tanks and a 100-gallon tank full of 2-month-old koi fry, all doing great. Put some larger ones into my 60-gallon, but all died within 2 days. The source water, chemistry, and equipment, sponge filters only, is the same for all tanks. Snails, duckweed, and pothos survived in the 60. Why would one tank have issues? It's hard to say. It's assuming that we didn't get an ammonia spike or anything like that. There could be an outside toxin, where snails could live through it and the plants would live through it. I mean, how many went into the 60-gallon, and how big are they currently? I mean, you maybe just overwhelmed it, but it sounds like you know what you're doing. But I always go back to basics on, we got to make sure the water was pinpoint, and in shape before we jump to conclusions like a toxin or something like that. Mamav2 says, best shape of tank for a goldfish. Probably long and, okay. Fancy goldfish utilize taller spaces. That's good. Whereas, like, single-tailed, the longer goldfish utilize long runs. So, like, the 240-gallon tank that I'm going to get, I'm thinking about doing shabunkins in it because it'll be 8-foot-long tank. They could really race back and forth. I think they would enjoy it. Where, like, this tank, it's a much taller tank. And I thought fancies would do well, and they seem to be doing well in it. And you can see them. They'll keep going up and utilizing the space up here, whereas if it was like a neon tetra, it would only ever be in the middle. So, yeah. What are the plants behind me in the goldfish tank that look like rope? These right here, those are Crinum calamitratums. And let's see here. Can arandas be kept in a koi? Kept with koi? No. Well, I won't say no, but it would be very hard. They're likely to not, do well. Can goldfish go with guppies? I don't recommend it, even though I'm doing it right now, but I'm using it for a specific purpose. I have a 2-inch goldfish eating duckweed in a guppy tank for me, but it's very short term. Does stress stunt goldfish equal to water conditions or tank size? I don't know. I guess I haven't really had super stressful situations where I'm trying to grow a goldfish. So what that means is, like, I feel like any answer I give you would be purely guessing and not factual or experience-based. So I'm not sure. Can I say that is stress bad for fish? Yes. Does it actually limit their size? I don't know. Dylan Vogue asks, how big do arandas get? Huge. Like, their bodies can get big, like big. And they've got tail on top of that, and then they've got their wen. They're one of the larger-bodied fancy goldfishes. Opinions on a $20,000 goldfish worth it? Yes, every cent. If you've got $20,000 to spend on a goldfish, why not? It's no different than a dog or a car or anything like that. If you get enjoyment out of it, $20,000, you should totally do it. Richard James, can koi live in ponds in very hot areas? Usually, yes, if the pond is built correctly where it's deep enough and you let the water stratify. So that means that all the water up top would be very hot, but the water down below would be cold. And you do the opposite of that during the winter. You want the water down below to be warm and the water up top to freeze. I have plenty. So, KG Cichlids, I see you have plenty of oxygen in your goldfish tank behind you. Is it a habit they go to the surface and gulp air, like they're doing right now? In my opinion, I actually don't have plenty. I could definitely have more. I've got an air stone going on in here, and then also in the sump, but I don't have a lot of surface agitation. And you know, this comes back to my eternal debates with everyone. Just because you have a sump, that doesn't mean you can't assume like, oh, he's got a sump, he's got great aeration. Because I'm running that sump all the way into the water so it runs silent, and I'm not getting the benefits of like a wet dry going. So right now, it's actually safe to assume that the only oxygen I have going in here is 2 air stones worth. Could I increase that? Yes. Will I increase that? Maybe. That being said, is it common for them to go up and mouth the top? Yeah, they're kind of looking for food. If they were all up there, always doing that, that would be a bad thing. Ryan Poth asks, what are the black goldfish called? There's a few different ones I have in my tank. Like this one here is a black aranda. Sometimes gets called, like a blue aranda or something like that. These are black moors, there and there. I don't have any black ranchus in here, but, just because they're black doesn't mean they're a certain type, but it just means a color, and then it's the type of ranchu they are. Welcome to the stream, MJ Fish. Are goldfish omnivores? They totally are, and the more vegetable, the better. Oh, man, I'm scrolling here. I scrolled back a little too far, trying to keep up with everyone tonight. How many people do we have in this thing? Looks like 178. Go ahead and like this if you haven't already. Share it around on your Facebook. Make your grandma watch it. Let's get more people in here because currently we moved the time around, and this is doing worse than if I was later at night. And later at night is way better for me, So if I'm going to take a whole day off of work to run a live stream, it should be performing better. So, how big is the tank behind me? A little over 200 gallons. Do I like the bubble eye look? If I was into goldfish, I don't think I would be. I don't know if I don't like it. I like the challenge they pose. They're very difficult, in my opinion. I think they're weird, and they get a lot of comments. Carmen Radford, hey, what do you feed your fish? What tricks can your fish do? Mine do a few. I haven't spent enough time to make them do any tricks, unfortunately. These ones behind me, I feed a lot of Hikari Sinking Cichlid XL. All my other goldfish get my omnivore blend that I have made for me because I just think it's better, but it doesn't sink, it floats. And I prefer floating food, but since I have an overflow on that one, I can't do floating food without turning it off. That's an interesting one. Brendan says, build a goldfish. What color, pattern, fin structure, and anything else would I want thrown in? Okay. So if I could make my own fish... I mean, really what I would be making is I'd be making long fin, and then I would want koi patterns. So, like, I would love just black and white, or black, white, and red, things like that. So, essentially, I'm making really weird shabunkins or Sarasa comets, because I can't really think of anything like, I'm trying to think like a ranchu or something like that. Like, what would I change? Maybe I would get rid of the head growth on ranchus, because long term I don't like it to take over their eyes. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I've never thought of that. Is there any money in growing out fancies? What does the business model look like? Well, I think it all hinges on can you buy quality small goldfish? That's what it hinges on. If you can't buy high quality, you're wasting your time. That being said, most people don't want to sell high quality small goldfish because if they grow them up, they make more money. So I think the business model hinges on that. Do you have a guy that breeds too many goldfish that can't grow them all out? If that's yes, then grow them out. Otherwise, I think there is some money to be made here and there and having a good eye at seeing a goldfish that has more potential than it should, but I feel like it's a hard road to travel. All right. Dylan says, I love goldfish, but don't know if she's going to eat my pearl danios. Probably will. if it's a fancy goldfish, they might be way too slow to do it, but a common or a Sarasa would probably do it, yeah. Ricky J says, would incorrect silicone, tank resealed with non-aquarium safe cause toxic water? Yes, totally, 100%. Like, if there was any mold inhibitor in there, that's definitely the reason it killed all those koi. Let's see, I accidentally scrolled way far up. Let me scroll back down. Do I do any yearly or seasonal proactive treatments with my goldies? I don't, but pretty much all my goldfish live inside. I watch my goldfish, and if there's something wrong with them, I would totally treat them. I mean, I quarantine them and treat them when they come into my possession, and if I thought something was going on, I would definitely treat them, but, you know, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't do like every 6 months just deworm them or anything like that. I mean, maybe I'm not saying that it would be bad to do that. I just don't do it. So, yeah. It's alleged says goldfish with koi. What do you mean won't do well? Well, like arandas, because they have a different body pattern. So let's analyze this here. Let's say you have a aranda goldfish that's this big, which would be a fairly big aranda, and then you have a 4-foot koi. Which one do you think gets the majority of the food? You know, and then let's say when one chases the other one off, who's going to win? And guess what? That 4-foot koi can, just turn its tail and send that, that aranda halfway across the pond. So is it always going to be, they instantly die? No, but it's not optimal for them, and most people would say they don't do that well. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what ZBZ. I don't know how you would say that name instead of. Yeah. Anyway, that's an interesting thought. Kenny Kirk's talking about albinos, and I don't see too many goldfish that are albino. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen one. I know there's lemons and stuff like that, but I feel like I've never seen an albino in person. Which is something to be said because, goldfish in general are bred in just like stupid mass quantity, like even as feeders. So, yeah. Kenny Kirk says, what do I think about waking goldfish? I actually like them. I haven't really kept them a lot, but I like them. Yeah. The problem is they're a little expensive, and most of the time I have to import them, and I never see ones like, oh man, that's like the best one ever. I better keep that one. So I just haven't run into it yet. What is the growth rate on the fin trails on fancies? I don't know if I know necessarily the rate, I guess. I don't know. I've never really tracked that. I'm usually trying to put body size on. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Would those Zoomed Lowboy aquariums be good for goldfish? I think they would for a while, but I think they'll, let's say you had, it's the same problem that koi have, and that is once that fish gets big enough that when it's feeding off food off the top, its tail's dragging on the ground, it tends to get fin rot and bacterial infection. So for growing out fry and maybe even breeding, they might work really well in the Zoomed Lowboy tanks, but I'm not sure they'd be great all year round. Russell Beach says, kind of a koi question. The floss you bought for my sump, did I find out it was aquarium safe? Seems to be. All my fish are still alive. So, yeah, I mean, I was pretty confident it would be, but I'm always unsure when you're doing stuff in front of the public. So, what did I do? I missed some stuff here. Let me. Oh, come on. This thing is acting up here. Let me scroll up. How many koi do I own personally? Personally, I think I'd have to go count, but I want to say it's like 10 or 12. Dandy Arandas has the best goldfish period. That's just a straight up lie. No way. He's one of the easiest sources to get goldfish from in the U.S., but the best goldfish? No way. There's private breeders with way better stuff, and then there's stuff you can buy out of Japan, Vietnam, and China that are way higher quality. But that being said, it is definitely a decent option. Yep, goldfish is the topic currently. We'll switch over here pretty soon, I think, because I think we're hitting the gamut of what there is to see. Kevin Beckford says, who watches Jenny from Solid Gold? I do. I think most people that are into goldfish will have. Yeah. I think she should do more videos. It's kind of a shame that she built that kind of massive channel and then it's doing other stuff now, because it was nice to get a weekly dose of goldfish. And that's something I should say. Does anyone know any other good goldfish channels? Because, what is there? There's the Green Mountain Goldfish and stuff like that, but she stopped. I don't know of any, active goldfish channels. So I know Joey might start doing some stuff in his big tank. That would be cool. I want to start doing some more stuff, but I always like to know, where can I go to geek out about goldfish? If I have to be the goldfish guy, I'm not going to geek out on my own videos. There's always, everyone wants to be able to come home, sit on your couch and watch some YouTube videos, right? And I can't watch my own videos, so I got to watch other people's. And if no one's making goldfish videos, I don't get that then. Is there a way to trigger or force your goldfish to breed? There is. You could force out the eggs and the milk by hand. I'm not a big fan of that strategy, but mostly separate males and females, feed them way too much good food, put them together, and then the males will end up just beating the females up till the eggs come out, and then they spread their milk around and you make babies. All right. Optimal tank size for 2 Arandas, probably a 40 breeder. They're one of the larger breeds, typically, of goldfish, longwu. Goldfish get along with snails or try to eat them. Goldfish will try to eat anything that fits in their mouth. If the snails are big enough that they can never fit in their mouth, they can work out okay. Can is the key thing there. How many gallons per fancy goldfish do I recommend? Somewhere between 20 and 30 gallons is a very loose rule. And definitely more is better, and the bigger the tank gets, the more you can fudge that rule. If you have a 10,000-gallon aquarium, I'm not going to tell you can only put 500 goldfish in it. You could probably do more, and it depends on a lot of factors like water changes, food type of goldfish, things like that. What is the best food to use for koi? Probably what can you afford? Sake Hikari. Is it about $240 a bag for, there's more expensive than that. There's less expensive. I'd get the best food that fits your budget. If you had a budget in mind, I could probably help you from there. All right, let's go ahead and turn this open to any type of questions now. It doesn't have to be purely goldfish related. We can switch over to anything. I know someone was asking about apistos and some other things like that. Let's go ahead and open up to anything. You can still ask goldfish questions, but now I want to make sure that we're answering diseases and stuff like that if anyone's got problems. Reef Spy asked, do yellow goldfish exist? I'm talking like canary yellow. No, there's the lemon or apricot goldfish. You could probably take them to canary yellow if you juiced them like they do African cichlids or used radiation like they do for discus, but nothing ethically is done that way, yeah. How much can an 8-inch goldfish eat, or what should they eat in a day? I would wager that a goldfish could probably eat their body weight every day. Kind of like a plecostomus. And should they eat? Probably not nearly that much. For most fish, commercial fish farms and stuff like that, it's 2% of their body weight a day spread out over multiple meals. Let's see here. Any other species people are using in ponds instead of koi? Some new trend there in the Pacific Northwest. There's hyphen banded sharks. I actually think that the rainbow shiner could do well. I think there's a few other things too, but yeah, nothing that people are really doing yet. There's that apisto question. Michael Tet asks, I bred orange flash cockatoides and regular. The store wants to buy them. They sell orange flash for $13.99 and regular for $7.99. What should I ask for store credit on the fry? So if you're getting store credit, I would be asking for somewhere between 1/3 to a half. You might be better off, if you've never worked with these people before, asking them well, how much are you offering me and start there. And if they're like, well, you got to pony up a number, then start at half and say it's store credit. And be like, if you're paying me cash, we can talk a different number, but, half I think is reasonably fair. But it all depends on how good your fish are and how many you're selling. If you're selling to them 100 of them, they're not going to pay half. If they got to take 100 of them, they're going to pay like a quarter of what they sell them for because they got to do all the storing. Charlie Jackson says, have I ever kept bichers? I totally have. Yeah, they're fun. Am I planning on going to see Sausage Party? I don't even know what that is. I don't even have cable, so no. Is it safe to drill a 100-gallon aquarium on the bottom compared to the sidewall? The glass is thick. You'd have to see whether it's tempered or not. A lot of tanks are tempered on the bottom, though, so you got to look into that. Justin Lloyd says, wouldn't be doing stuff just if you didn't mention rummy nose tetras in those low boy tanks. Yeah, I think they could be very good for me personally to use them as like quarantine tanks. Like tonight when I go to the airport, I'm supposed to pick up 600 rummy nose tetras. So yeah, could I put them in a 50-gallon tank and they would love life probably through quarantine? Totally. Kevin Dabowski asks, have I ever built a tank from scratch? I haven't. I'm convinced I wouldn't be able to sleep at night thinking, oh man, I didn't do it right, and it would keep me up all night, so I'd rather pay someone else to do it and I can forget about it. How do you get... This question doesn't make sense. How do you get fish tanks pH high? So raising pH higher in aquariums, I typically use crushed coral and let it do it slowly and naturally. Otherwise, you could use something like baking soda, but it's pretty volatile, or it can be. It can jump really high. Let me go back to that question. Darn it, where'd it go? Oop, I scrolled up too much. I think it said, is General Cure safe for shrimp tanks? Is API General Cure shrimp and invert safe, and what meds to clear cloudy shrimp? Kevin, a lot of the shrimp diseases haven't been figured out yet. That's the problem. We know they can get parasites. We know they can get bacterial infections, but I don't think enough research has gone into fixing all those problems, and the people that are fixing them aren't really sharing how they do it because it makes them lots of money. So if you're a breeder and you tell another breeder how to keep better stock, you sell less shrimp. So I think it's going to be a while till we really figure out what are good ways to medicate shrimp. But yes, I personally have used General Cure with shrimp because if I have fish in the tank, they get that. What's the best bottom feeding fish for messy eating fish? Completely depends on what fish we're talking about, but goldfish are a great one. Juraparis or earth eaters are pretty good. Corydoras might be good. Just depends. Can red-tailed sharks live with other fish? Please respond. Yes. When are you going to keep frontosas? They are the gentle giants of Africans. I don't know if I agree with that. They just hunt at night. They're night hunters, and they can be brutal too. They are, in the terms of aggression from Africa, yes, they are on the milder side like an Oscar, but, let's not call them a neon tetra either. When will I keep them? I don't know. If I was going to do it again, maybe I keep the red variety. I don't know. I don't love them, and I don't want to dedicate such a big tank to them. So someone would have to fall into my lap, and I'd have to, just get a wild hair and go, yeah, I'm going to do this. But I'm not really going out of my way to do it. I'd do Tropheus and more stuff like that first, probably. John Murkovich says, I have a 10-gallon tank with 6 white clouds, 3 ghost shrimp, 1 pond snail. Could I add Corydoras paleatus? And the pH is 7.5 to 8. Well, first, 7.5 to 8, that's a huge range. I would say at 7.5, sure. At 8.0, make sure those Corys are coming from Florida. But yeah, it could work. Pardon me. Can one goldfish cloud up a 29-gallon tank? Totally. It's not about how many fish are in a tank. It's about how much you feed a fish. So a whole handful of food is going to cloud up a 29-gallon tank. Doesn't matter how many fish were in there. Flynn's Fish Forum. How long can fish stay in a bag? I'm talking about pet store bagged fish. A few days. It depends on how they're doing it, but I would say most of mine can be a few days at least. Would feeding Apistogramma cockatoides white worms from home culture daily cause issues in a couple weeks? Lost to and can't figure out how you did. So Airhawk, Apistogrammas in general can't handle that high protein load. So you need to vary it up. And just like feeding them live blackworms or bloodworms every day usually causes them to die from bloat and things like that. You can do brine shrimp every day because it's low enough protein and easy enough for them to digest. Happy Camper, if I need to do an extra water change during the week, do I add fertilizer or wait until normal water change day? You should be adding fertilizer because if you're going to change fertilizer out, it's still going to starve the plants. So usually you would add it back in. Michael Johnson, your Wells cat had bumps in his mouth, treated with Dimilin X, thought it was anchorworms, but before I even treated, they mysteriously went away. Yeah, I'm not sure what those are. Bumps in the mouth, huh? It seems weird they go away. I don't know enough about Wells catfish to know other than they get too big. And, is there any chance they get like breeding tubercles like goldfish where that was like kind of a breeding thing? I have no idea though, honestly. It's Not Butter says, can I email you a picture of my angelfish and have you sex them and identify their pattern? I'm kind of confused about how to do it. Probably not. I mean, you could, but chances are your fish probably aren't mature enough to sex them. And it's kind of hard to do through a picture. And then identifying their pattern, maybe, yeah. I mean, but if it's like just some mutt, it's going to be some mutt. Most goldfish are pretty easy, or not goldfish, but most angelfish are pretty easy to tell what they are. So Daniel Quinn says, you missed most of the show. When will you replay the first hour? So that when I click done with this, it takes up to about 30 minutes, but then the entire show gets put up online, and you'll be able to watch the whole thing. So, yeah. What are good tank mates for gouramis? What type of gouramis? That's the first question. How much should you feed 3-month-old bettas? I feed baby brine shrimp. As much as they're going to eat in about a minute and feed them like 20 times a day. Very, very frequent little amounts of food grows fish best. Let's see. I wanna ban that guy myself. Hold on, let me find him. Dang it, I think I'm way too far behind. Darn it. Where'd that guy go? Oh well. If I see him again, I'm getting him. What type of goodies am I picking up at the airport tonight? That's a hard question to answer because I've done so many shipments. Let me think. I know I've got rummy nose tetras. I've got a lot of plants. You guys have been ordering a lot of plants off the website. So a lot of plants. I think male Endler's livebearer, which is probably like 300 of those. I'm going to film it tonight, or at least I fully plan on. I could forget my camera or something stupid, but what else is in the shipment? Like, I know I ordered a bunch of stuff. I just can't remember. Like, the problem is when you order, like, I think it's 5 fish shipments alone this week. It's like, well, what'd you order from who? And then it's like, you order fish every week, so it's like, yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer. I'm waiting for the airway bill to show up. I haven't got even what flight it's on yet, so I could be waiting for all I know. I doubt it, but yeah. Julian's from Vancouver, Canada. Hey, I want to come up there sometime and shoot some fish rooms, so make it happen for me. Have I ever bought fish from Country Max? I haven't. I haven't even heard of that. I'm guessing it's a pet store? Yeah, I can't really rate them because I've never bought any. Does gender matter when it comes to goldfish? Yes, it definitely does. I'm glad someone asked that question. Looking into keeping ranchos on a 55, and I'm unsure if all female is a better idea than keeping both genders. It'll be a much more docile tank if you have all one gender, whether it's all female or all male. If you do get mixed genders, you're going to want more females than males. The males will harass the females to make them breed. Sergeant Tank says, "Hey, Corey, I believe you indicated in a previous live stream that you will be at the Aquatic Experience in Chicago. Will I be setting up a booth?" I probably will not be setting up a booth. I've worked booths before. I used to work the booths with Hikari, and I've done other gigs before. The problem when you're in a booth, you're stuck at the booth all day, every day. And I totally want to see all the speakers. Oliver Lucanus is going to be there, one of my all-time favorite speakers, very good at speaking. I want to see that. I want to interact with fans. I want to talk to other people. And yeah, I could do a lot of that from my booth, but imagine I want to go get lunch. Like, okay, it's 2 o'clock, I'm ready to go get lunch, and you show up and you're like, oh, it's the Aquarium Co-op booth. No one's there. How lame was that? Whereas if I'm just a guy walking around and you can run into me, that's better. And I'll probably post, video and stuff like that. Like, hey, I'm going to eat here. Who wants to come eat with me or whatever? I don't know. I'll make it work somehow. I'll find a way to make it work. I can't talk. Lisa says, would you suggest peat aquarium media for a blackwater aquarium, or would it lower the pH too much? pH out of your tap is close to 7. You're using Wapani wood, not changing water. If your goal is just to make the water tan and use blackwater extract, if you want to lower the pH, then yes, use the peat. Yeah, okay, so your next you follow up with is not changing the watercolor much. Buy some blackwater extract. That'll make your life easy. Superfish is back from walking his dog. We are on to anything, not just goldfish at this point. Will plants grow well in hard water? There are plants that do grow very well, but not all plants do. What am I doing here? Are dwarf African frogs particularly sensitive? Not in my experience. What's my best seller? Probably cardinal tetras if I had to guess off the top of my head right now. With shell dwellers, what type of flow should I have? That question would have been great for earlier today in the other stream, but I would say fairly decent flow because shell dwellers set up, they move the cave so that the water will keep fresh water going in the shell, and then it'll deliver the food in there. And that's how they actually do it in the wild, and that's the best way to get like live baby brine and cyclops and daphnia into those shells to feed the fry. Michael says, as far as the booth goes, that's what employees are for. So let's analyze this, because you guys probably have no idea that a booth is $800 to $1,000. Each plane ticket out is going to be $400 to $500 a piece, and then hotel rooms, you'd have to, basically rent a hotel room for each employee because you can't just demand that they stay together. On top of that, someone still has to run the store while I'm not there. So to do a booth like that, I think it would legitimately cost me $7,000 to $10,000 just so that you guys could walk up to a booth and say hello. Whereas if I don't have a booth and I'm just walking around, only costs me about $1,500, $2,000. So it's way cheaper, and that's why people always ask, like, why don't you do a booth to, Waro Joey and all kinds of people? Because it doesn't make sense to have a booth. That's why. Can I explain water change over carbon? So many people state that we need carbon in the filters. Doesn't a water change do the same? Well, Brian, it doesn't do the same thing. It kind of does. Basically, carbon is a way to take things out of water. If we change water, it takes some things out. Like, let's say nitrates. But let's say your tap water had too much fluoride in it, for instance. Carbon would take that out, but a water change wouldn't. That being said, don't get me wrong, I hate carbon and I rarely ever use it, and I don't consider it to be needed or have to use it. But there are uses for it, and I would say the best uses are taking medications out. Let's say you were painting your house and you want to make sure paint fumes are getting pulled out of the water, stuff like that. That makes a lot of sense to me, but just always using it doesn't make so much. The Joker Smile said, what game did I play at my monthly gaming session? That was actually last night. We played, what did we play? It's not. It wasn't Cthulhu Wars. What was it? What's that game called? It's very similar to Cthulhu Wars. I don't even remember the name of it. I'd have to look it up. That's a horrible excuse. I did win one game and took second to the other one, though, so that was a good night. Let's see here. Other than bettas and goldfish, what is the best fish to start a fish tank? I've had a dwarf frog in a 10-gallon for a while, but a natural disaster and haven't restarted. I would say most fish are okay to start it with. Like, my goal is this. When I start a fish tank, the conditions should never get bad enough that a fish dies, you know? So I wouldn't start with, like, shrimp, but at the same time, like a cardinal tetra, yeah, I would. A pistogramma, sure. You know, I'd start with almost anything because the way I start tanks, I get plants thriving and they're consuming waste. Then I put fish in, they go poop, and the plants eat it. So I never really have a chance for it to go badly. Daniel says, my goldfish change color. Will they change again? I can't be sure that they will, but they totally can. So realize that it's not necessarily a final color. So a hang-on back filter with a bag with nothing in it, you could do that, but it doesn't do much. You'd be much better off having it be sponge or bio rings or anything with more surface area, really. Could be filter floss, doesn't matter. If anyone wants to know the fertilizer hand pump sanitizer comment I left, yeah, so I had someone use, it's up there, but my Easy Green at my store as hand sanitizer. It was on the counter at the store, and you have to undo it because it was all done up. It wasn't like a tester thing. I had to undo it all the way and then squirt it on their hands. Yeah, that happened. Do I personally like Bolivian rams or German blue rams? I like all of the rams, and I saw in Dustin's video a couple weeks ago those Bolivian rams that the guy from Imperial Tropicals had in his personal tank. Those things were huge. That was kind of awesome. Kevin says, if I don't mind him asking, how much money do I spend a month in buying fish? You know, I honestly don't know that number. If I was better at business, I would. But the problem is, like let's say you're McDonald's, right? And you're selling hamburgers, and you go, I sell 10,000 hamburgers a month. It's easy. But I sell fish based on what's available. And every month, those hamburgers are available to McDonald's. But like right now, I would sell more big, fancy goldfish, except there's none to buy. So some months, I might, like in the summer, I buy way less than the winter because I sell way more in the winter. But I would say on average, and this number could totally be off, I would say on average, just on fish, and so I'm going to lump fish and plants and like live blackworms, so live goods in my store, I probably spend 8 to 10,000, that might be a bit much. 8,000. I'm gonna say 8,000, like $2,000 a week. I would say is an average. It could definitely go higher. It could go lower too. If there's nothing good to order, there's nothing good to order. Kevin asks, have I ever got zebra plecos in? Yeah, most times they're sitting in stock at my store. Yeah, I mean that's a time when I might spend more. If I buy 12 zebra plecos, obviously that's going to cost a decent amount of money. Can I keep a pair of rams with a pair of crebensis? In a big tank, like a 6-foot long tank probably, but yeah, in a small tank, not really. Is ceramic media filter better than a sponge filter? Watch my video on filtration, but I wouldn't say it's better. In fact, I personally think it's worse, but there's benefits to each of them, and I wouldn't say any one is better or worse. What's the worst thing that happened to me while keeping fish? When the 340-gallon tank busted a seam and flooded my entire store. That was by far the worst, because dead bodies and sand all the way, into the back of my store, in the bathroom, days of cleanup, $15,000 in damage. It was horrible. What's the most expensive fish I've ever bought? Albino silver arowana. Do you alter the pH to the fish ideal water, just deal with the pH that comes from the tap? Neither. My tap water is bad, and I buffer it up. And so, yeah, I basically buffer all my water to about 7.2 pH and make the fish live in that. How much longer is the stream going? Not past 7. Could end in a minute, but it's not going past 7. I'll tell you that. Yeah. What % of my store stock comes out of the fish room? What motivates the decision on what to breed versus buy? I would say the percentage is probably less than 1% comes from my own fish room, like actually breeding it. And what influences is purely what people want to buy. For breeding, it's whatever I'm interested in, honestly. Yeah. Let's see. Do crypts kill Val with allelopathy? Have I ever experienced that? I mean, I don't know if I've experienced it. I've had a lot of tanks that have crypts and Val in the same tank, but you know, I've never kept like the pink flamingo crypt. So for all I know, yeah, that kills it. I have no idea, but I haven't found a good source of allelopathy that's documented between the plants. And it could have happened to you, Michael, but if there was any other plant in that aquarium, it could have been them too. Who knows? You know, it's hard to say. Rams with a pearl gourami in a 40 breeder. Do rams prefer a rock aquascape or a plantscape? They don't really care so long as there's some cave formations. Favorite surface dwelling soft water fish? Probably half-beaks. What are good discus tank mates that can handle the temperature besides rams? Stirby, Corridoras, cardinal tetras, and it depends. Like, are you going to 82 or 86 degrees, or 89 or 88? You know, it depends on how high. Kevin asks, "Hey Corey, how much is the electric bill at my store? In the winter, or in the summer, it's about $250 for 2 months. In the winter, it can be as high as $600, which is very low. Other stores might be in the thousands of dollars because I'm all LED and all sponge filter. And you know, you might go to a high-end saltwater store, their bill might be $5,000 a month. Like, so it all depends on how the store is set up. But mine is set up to be very efficient. Very expensive to set up, but very efficient. Yeah, apparently I have potatoes on the grill for dinner. She's barbecuing corn. I don't know what else is going on. Probably some hot dogs would be my guess. But she did make hamburgers the other day, so maybe hamburgers. I don't know what's going on the grill, but I know in 9 minutes I'm going to find out. So Elizabeth is also having problems with crypts and valves in the same tank. I've kept them alive in the same tank, but yeah, there could be some allelopathy going on there where maybe it's just enough to hinder them. Kevin Walden, do all your fish shipments go to your fish room for quarantine, or I quarantine at the store too? I do quarantine at the store. I've got that back room if you've ever seen it, and I do bring some stuff here as well. Ideally, I want to always bring all the stuff back to my house or my fish room here, just because I think it's easier. It sucks to stop, unload some fish, pack the rest of them back up, drive them home. But yeah. Michael Tetz talking about the Wallstad book. I'm a big fan of that book because I think some real information was actually done, scientific. I've got a signed copy. I enjoy it. And that's where I learned about allelopathy. Paul Martin, was the Fluval winner selected? It has not been yet. I'm going to wait till like next week to do it, just because I want to make sure everyone gets a fair chance. And there's no rush on it, so yeah. Any albino cories found in the wild? Or are albino cories? Not that I know of. I don't think there are. They usually get hunted out and killed. Yeah, 250 electric at your house. Yeah, I mean, my electric here runs more. Like when I was heating the fish room with the heaters, it was like $800 every 2 months. It was horrible. That's why we're getting natural gas put in the fish room. Any plans to get more turtles? I know you said you might have some coming from Lamont. Yeah, I do. They'll start making their way into videos here, but I got a terrapin turtle and I got a big red-eared slider female. It's a hypo, I think I call it a hypo bumblebee. And apparently I'm told its name is Pineapple. You can't get your store to move to LEDs. It's like, why? Because they don't have the money. It's expensive. So imagine, and I don't know how many tanks your local store has, but I have over 100. And so let's say I need to buy fixtures and I get the best rate I can and they're $50 a piece. That's a $5,000 investment today. And if you watch my Breeding for Profit series, most fish stores are already up to their necks in debt. Their credit cards are maxed out. They've got no cash on hand. Not a lot they can do about it. And so when you say, why don't you just make the $5,000 investment? It saves you money long term. They think, well, sure, that's great, except I don't have $5,000 on hand to save money later. And that's why I started out by saving money at the beginning, so I would save money later. And I learned from working in a fish store, if you don't do it right the first time, you will never do it. And so you have to just do it from the beginning because it's really hard to make that transition afterwards. Let's see. Do I have any experience with brackish tanks? Do I know plants that will do well? I don't, Justin. I've played with them a little bit, and I've never found plants that thrive in brackish water. I find that they always do bad for me. And yeah, I know there's always people like, well, I had great luck. I'm just saying I personally haven't had great luck. So, it's hard to know. I just realized I'm like sitting way down here. I just wasn't watching the video at all. The longer I go, the more, a couple more hours I'd be laying on the ground, I guess. Let's see. Any videos of my koi pond coming up? Maybe. I haven't really thought about it. I thought people weren't really into it, so I wasn't really filming more of that. Do I own any bettas personally? I own Betta Simplex, and something that's sold to me is Betta Rubra, but it's not. And I've got some Betta Rubra at the store breeding that I need to bring home and play with, but not really. Am I planning to do any more videos on how to breed certain fish? Yeah, let's talk about that for the last 5-ish minutes. After I hit duck for cover. What do I like better, OB peacocks or shabunkins? Shabunkins. The next guy asked, what does OB stand for? Orange blotch. Anyway, let's talk about overall what I want to do. Overall, I think I want to finish this room with the koi. I want to finish the main room. And then I just want to make everything look good. It kills me to show off how dirty my tanks are, how much crap's laying around and stuff like that because I'm busy. But whenever I get time, it's like, ooh, I could build and make this better, or I can make it look better. And it's not a case of, is it any better for the fish? The fish are perfectly healthy with the water change and all that, but visually it looks better. And I think people do judge me for, oh, your tanks are dirty, stuff like that. So I think if I can finish building, then I can focus on beautifying. And then I can really focus on breeding some fish and stuff like that. And that's ultimately what I want to do. This whole room is basically dedicated to breeding fish because that's what I want to do. So there was a very important question. Favorite condiments on a hot dog? If I have to choose, it's probably mayonnaise, shredded cheese, and barbecue sauce on a toasted bun. Yeah, that's probably got to be it. We got 3 more minutes. What other trouble can I get into? I don't know, TR Hades. Maybe your questions sucked or I didn't see them. I'm reading your question right now. Why didn't you respond to me? Once you read it around me every time, but not me. I need help. I'm waiting for it, dude. Go ahead. Seriously, say it. Taking too long. Come on. If I start a video, then skip to the end and see Corey's posture go down. That's probably true. It just sinks down. And it's mostly because I start just focusing more and more on the questions. And long term, I think I need a display up here that I can read the questions from because then I'm looking at the camera. But I'm afraid it's going to make a glare on the glass back here. I really want to do all this room over again and make it better. Have I ever thought about doing an aquascape contest? I've considered it, but I haven't. Yeah. Still waiting for that guy to ask this question again. He literally hasn't asked it again. So he complains about me not answering. Now I'm waiting for him. There we go. I have a tank set up right now. Just added 3 neon tetras. Switched the filter. I had 3 fish die in 2 days. 2 of them are 4 months old. Had no symptoms. Just died. Do you know what it could be? Please help. You switch the filter without running both of them at the same time. You lose your cycle, or you lost your cycle. You probably had at least a miniature ammonia spike and killed them both off. So you should have ran both filters in conjunction, and you shouldn't have made such a drastic switch at the same time. And without knowing more about the setup, what size the tank and stuff like that, I can't help you anymore. Add more details, can help you more. Email me. I'll be glad to get back to you. What? I got 1 minute. 1 minute. You have lots of places for the bacteria to grow, but if you swap the filter, you swapped out the bacteria bed. So, just because you've got space for it to grow doesn't mean. It's like if I have 100 parking spots to fill up with cars, I still have to buy the cars to put in there. What do you do with fish that nobody wants and no one else will take? They meet the turtle blender. So they go live with turtles, and if they get eaten, that's what happens. But, let's say, what do you do with a fish that's only got one eye and missing a tail and things like that? Like, yeah, I could kill them, or I can let them live their life, and maybe they live for years with turtles before they get eaten one day, or maybe they live forever. Corey, if you had to choose one hobby other than fish keeping and gaming, what would it be? And this is assuming, and this is what every YouTuber says, assuming it's besides YouTube, I would choose basically air rifles and things like that. It's a hobby that I've only dabbled in a little bit. I have an R7. It's a spring-loaded air rifles. I've got a fish guy that's a buddy of mine. We do it every once in a while, but I really am intrigued by that. And I wish I had more time. I have a gun. I haven't even put a whole tin of pellets through it or anything like that. Really wish I did spend more time. One more goldfish question. All right, this is the last question for the road. Probably a very beginner question, but how many ranchus would I do in a 55-gallon tank? I'm going to say break the rules and do 4. Oh my God. Coco's Goldfish Forum is going nuts right now. They're sending the mob with the pitchforks and the flame torches to torch my house. But I personally would do 4 with lots of water changes. All right, guys. I appreciate you all hanging out. We'll do it again next Sunday. There's 2 live streams. If you haven't already, watch the one from earlier. If you came in late, this one will be re-uploaded and you can watch it in a little bit. Hope it was fun. It's a little bit taxing as by the second one. I think the first one I stayed upright the whole time. The second one I'm getting a little down there, but we're at at least 4 hours of streaming or something like that. But yeah, so this week's going to be rough. I got to get 2 videos out. And man, there is a million things for me to do. I've got an employee that's on vacation. Lamont's not working there anymore. Another employee that I hired put his 2 weeks in at his place. So he's not even going to be here for 2 weeks. So this week I got to work an insane amount. And somehow I got to fit in a couple extra things. Like I'm going to help Lamont move. And I'm going to help my mom move, and I've got a birthday present event we got to do for Katie. So there's all these things I got to fit in, and somehow I got to fit in some videos. So I've been sneaking in footage even today and maybe later tonight. And so, don't judge me if these next 2 videos aren't the best ever, but I got some things in the works that might make them pretty good. I enjoy hanging out with you guys. Hopefully we'll see you next weekend. I'm going to start wrapping this thing up. I got to find the right button to push to make this thing end and make me get food, and I appreciate all the well wishes from you guys on tonight's shipment. Let me take a look real quick. Ooh, I do have the invoice. Let's see. I can tell you guys right now what's coming in. Oh man, it looks like they shorted me on a lot of stuff. Oh, I'm sad. So I got 400 black neon tetras, 200 red-eye tetras, only 150 rummy nose tetras, and then a bunch of plants. So not too much to put away tonight. Now you already know, that video is going to be lame. Oh, but it'll be with other stuff, and I got some other stuff in this week, so don't worry. Thanks for hanging out. Again, I know I say it a lot, but I truly do enjoy hanging out with you guys. I try to answer most questions. I don't intentionally skip people or anything like that. Realize, someone counted at one time I answered 90 questions in an hour. That's a lot. That's more than one every minute. And so I do what I can, and I'm going to cut this thing off. See you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. See you later. I always got to click the button twice.